Come gather around people wherever you roam and admit that the waters around you have grown. And accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times, they are changing. That is the beautiful lyrics of the poet that was the hero of all the old people in technology, the Steve Jobses, etc. Back when they were young, had nothing to lose, and wanted to challenge the status quo. Sir Bob Dylan, the times they are changing in technology is what I want to talk with you about today. Better start swimming or sink like a stone. People of DOKU.TECH, Kustrim's wonderful Balkan digital culture tribe. I've been following your tribe for many years. It's a pleasure finally being here. I sense that you got a really good thing going. So thanks a lot for the invitation. I'll talk about 4 principles that I see that we need to change to in tech. In tech, we have many beliefs, many things we say that are the truth or the perspective or prisms we have on the world. Today, I want to challenge you on whether they're actually right or whether they're still right, whether they're still constructive. And I want to give you 4 new principles that might serve as better constructive frames for the next chapter in tech. So, are you up for getting going? Good. We'll start in the garage. This beautiful little garage. How many of you have ever seen this garage? It's the most famous garage in the world. It's the garage where Hewlett and Packard started a small company that eventually became the biggest tech company in the valley. It was called Hewlett Packard or HP, and most of you probably don't even know it today, but it was a very big company when I was your age, still. This is the garage that defined the narrative of technology and the valley for many years. That we were the people in the garages challenging the status quo, in the basements, in the attics. In tech, we've seen ourselves as the people that were challenging and really had nothing, was sitting at the outskirts of society, and for a long time, it was actually also true. In 1994, in an attic in an old building, I, together with 2 friends, started the first internet company in a small country called Denmark up north. We truly had nothing. There were around 5,000 to 10,000 people using the internet in Denmark back then. There were, I think, 8 websites in the country, and no one believed in us. Our parents were frustrated with what the heck we were doing. In every meeting we were in, we were evangelizing that the internet was this beautiful thing that would connect us all and change everything. It now has. But the challenge in our tech world is that we're still behaving like we're sitting in that garage. But the world we're living in today, we're actually dominating the world. Tech is dominating how we live our lives. I went to parents' meetings lately in school, and we spent 3 hours discussing how to regulate our teenagers' use of technology. There were no other discussions around parenting or how to have a better school. It was all about tech. It's challenging. It's changed how we organize ourselves. And financially, we're now in a situation where 8 out of 10 of the largest companies in the world are tech companies. And they're not only the largest companies in the world, they're also in positions of greater influence, impact, than any other type of company we've ever seen. So the first principle I want to put forward to you guys is that we're not in the garage, we're in charge. And in this room, I'm not sure all of us feels that we're in charge, but our field is in charge. It's titans of industry, it's big companies are truly in charge. Our narrative, our technology, our perspectives, our values, our systems are in charge. And it's also really defining us even if we're not in charge, as to the rest of the people in the world, as the ones that are. You work in tech, you have power, you are in control of the future. And the uproar against big tech that we've all seen the last 12, 24 months, and all the scandals are just the beginning, in my opinion. So we're not in the garage, we're in charge, and that changes everything. That was the first principle. Next, I want to talk about a difficult subject, which is arrogance. Really a tough one. Back when I was 18 years old, in 1996, the late John Perry Barlow, rest his soul, did a seminal happening and declaration. It was called the Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace. It had words and statements like, on behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. We have no elected government, nor are we likely to have one. We will create a civilization of the mind in cyberspace. May it be more humane and fair than the world you governments have made before. For me, this was really profound. I was 18 years old. I was very open to believing in anything, and it really instilled in the minds of a generation that we were the new people in charge, that we would not abide by the old laws. We would not be interested in government or democratic institutions. We were creating our own party, our own scene. It defined an era of tech that, in my opinion, made us see ourselves as smarter than the rest, above the rest, above our democratic institutions, not needing to abide by the rules of society. Some might argue that it was a good idea in the early 90s to create this kind of new space for the internet, and that the internet shouldn't be governed and regulated early on. But it also instilled a belief system in a lot of us. At best, it was naive. At best, it's just a bunch of ultra-libertarian, anti-government thoughts labeled as ideology for a new generation and for a new digital world. At worst, it was really harmful, and it hasn't served us well. We've been occupied by defining us as a subculture that knows better, as a tribe of digital nomads roaming the globe with no responsibility for the societies, the cities, the countries we're part of. Or it just made us occupied building startups to make a living or profit. So the next principle is pretty simple and pretty straightforward for any person that believes that we are a collective and has an element of democratic beliefs in them. And that is that tech is not above us, and we're here to serve. Let me try to explain what I mean by that. That we are not an elite, that we're not smarter than anyone else. We're just a bunch of group that happens to have some pretty unique capabilities, skill sets, and perspectives. And that actually gives us an even greater responsibility to serve. Government and politics is really hard. And for the first 20 years of my career, I spent 0 minutes engaging with it. I spent a lot of time procrastinating over how hopeless the government was in understanding the new culture, the digital participatory culture, the new world, the internet. But I didn't engage to actually make it good. I was just standing on the sideline telling them how old and wrong they were and how stupid they were. And that's pretty easy. But if we have all these capabilities as rebels, as challengers, we really need to serve in a way that's respectful to our fellow citizens and not consider us as an elite above them. So that was principle number 2, a little bit hard and dark. Now we'll go to a little bit more easy subject. The next subject is the sacred place of Silicon Valley, or the Santa Clara Valley, as it was called in this photo back when it was a beautiful landscape of orchards and flower fields. When I walk to work in our office in San Francisco, I see people with open wounds fixing in front of the tech giants' offices. When I try to get to work, the roads are congested because everyone are driving to work in a taxi. And when I talk to people, they're all obsessed about the latest new service where for $25, I can have somebody come and pick up my mail, label it, and bring it to the post office. These are first world problems. These are the 1% problems that none of you and me have in our worlds, right? We can't afford to have somebody come and pick up a letter and bring it to the post office. It's a very bizarre element. Today, the Silicon Valley I knew, the San Francisco I knew, I've been coming there since '95, many times every year, was the place of counterculture. But today, it's really a little bit of a bizarre world. Both Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are building spaceships because they think planet Earth can't be saved. That's a pretty dystopian perspective, and also makes you be able to act pretty irresponsible, because if you think it's going under anyhow, then they're just making a bunch of money while doing it. Facebook board member Peter Thiel has bought land in New Zealand because he believes doomsday will hit, and they all have private jets standing ready to get there. Mark Zuckerberg has done the same in Hawaii. A new study out last week found that half the population in San Francisco is planning to move within 18 months. Imagine living in a place where half the population wants to move and doesn't really engage to build it into a better place because they know they're going to go pretty soon anyhow. They're not really stuck there. It's a place that in many ways is a little bit of a failed place, and it's a place that can't serve as a role model or inspiration for the worlds we're living in. The next chapter in tech is really all about us integrating with society, about all the friction between what's private and what's shared, what's democratic and what's individual. So the next principle I want to put forward to you is very simple, that we've learned everything from Silicon Valley that we can. We've learned from Silicon Valley what we can. We've learned how to do startups. We've learned how to angel invest. We've learned how to build ecosystems. We've learned a lot about coding, and we've gotten a lot of technologies. But for the next chapter in technology, we need to reinvent our societies and build well-functioning systems. We need to design for something that's truly democratic and not for the elite. So there's not many more things we can get. So my challenge to you guys is to stop copy-pasting from now. Let's rise as Europeans, where we have a pretty unique perspective on what the future of our societies and our institutions could be. And that would be the next chapter in the digital age. Last, there's a lot of talk about disruption and innovation these days. I meet a lot of people that are fearful of the future because a lot of innovation consultants are running around saying all the jobs are going to go, AI is going to take over, we'll all be driving in self-driving cars in 3 years. It's a fear-based, very externalized singularity perspective that's really been dominating, at least in my part of the world. It really shows no understanding of how technology actually is created. That is human beings like everyone in this room that are creating the technology, putting our values, putting our beliefs into it, codifying our tools, building the cultures, the platforms, and the code. When we look at narratives, we really need to look at what is actually progression. For a few years, Uber was driving around the streets of Copenhagen, my home city, without abiding by any local law, without their drivers paying taxes like everyone else, without understanding the local culture they were part of. As I often said, it was pretty easy to start a pirate taxi service. The only thing it requires is your willingness to do something illegal. But it was not progression, because we actually had old collective cooperative-based models of how to run transport infrastructures. They obviously could be better. They could be reinvented. They could have a better app. The drivers could be nicer. But in a fundamental systemic way, they're actually pretty good. So I want to challenge you with the next one, that the narrative of disruption and innovation is done, and that we need to have a perspective of reinvention. We're not here only to disrupt and throw away everything that was before. We're here to reinvent it and actually create progress. It's very easy to just throw away things and do something truly new. It's very hard to take what's there and to actually change it into something that's better, that works in the age we're in today. Many years ago, Da Vinci created this beautiful, actually his first painting ever, very famous painting, the creation of Adam. And that is really what reinvention is, that it's reinvention of old concepts in a new context, which, by the way, is also the definition of Renaissance. I'd rather have Renaissance than dystopian futures where we believe human beings don't have any role. Human beings are truly even more important than ever before. So that was the fourth principle. I want to end on reading a little letter for you. It's a letter that 150 designers, philosophers, programmers, entrepreneurs created together in 48 hours. Young and old, men and women, from more than 35 countries. We created it at a new festival called Tech Festival, a new global progressive technology festival that we created in Copenhagen 9 months ago. It's a manifesto for a new wave in tech, and it reads something like this. To everyone who shapes technology today, we live in a world where technology is consuming society, ethics, and our core existence. It is time to take responsibility for the world we are creating, time to put humans before business, time to replace the empty rhetoric of building a better world with a commitment to real action. It is time to organize and to hold each other accountable. Tech is not above us. It should be governed by all of us, by our democratic institutions. It should play by the rules of our societies. It should serve our needs, both individual and collective, as much as our wants. Progress is more than innovation. We are builders at heart. Let's create a new renaissance. We will open and nourish honest public conversation about the power of technology. We are ready to serve our societies. We will apply the means at our disposal to move our societies and their institutions forward. Let us build from trust. Let us build for true transparency. We need digital citizens, not mere consumers. We all depend on transparency to understand how technology shapes us, which data we share, and who has access to it. Treating each other as commodities from which to extract maximum economic value is bad. Not only for society as a complex, interconnected whole, but for each and every one of us. Design open to scrutiny. We must encourage a continuous public and critical reflection on our definition of success, as it defines how we build and design for others. We must seek to design with those for whom we are designing. We will not tolerate design for addiction, deception, or control. We must design tools that would love our loved ones to use. We must question our intent and listen to our hearts. Let us move from human-centered design to humanity-centered design. We are a community that exerts great influence. We must protect and nurture the potential to do good with it. We must do this with attention to equality, with humility, and with love. In the end, our reward will be to know that we have done everything in our power to leave our little garden patch just a little greener than we found it. We who have signed this letter will hold ourselves and each other accountable for putting these ideas into practice. That is our commitment. That was the manifesto we created. It's been signed by about 5,000 people so far, committing to it. And that was really what I wanted to end on. Let's swim up from the perception of us being underground or only business. Escape from the narrow perspectives of startups and mere capitalism. Let's rise and lead our little societies into the digital era in a way that's very different from the narrative that's been put forward so far, and with new principle. Because the times, they are changing in tech. Thank you.